Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani, and I'm really happy to welcome you to this new series on the narcissistic types you meet when you walk down the street, but just narcissistic types. There have been so many questions. Doc, what's a covert narcissist? What's a communal narcissist? Talk to me about these types. So I thought it might be time to do a much more robust series that really spells the types out. Each episode on each type is actually going to be in two parts because these are pretty lengthy to give you a chance to really break this down. Today, we're going to take on the grandiose narcissist. Now, before I get there, because this is going to be a good series, please hit that subscribe button. Join this YouTube community of people who care deeply about issues related to narcissistic relationships. Hit that bell and you'll get a daily notification each day a new episode comes out. But let's talk about the grandiose narcissist. And in essence, this is really starting at the very beginning. Because the grandiose narcissist is the classical narcissist. This is the kind of narcissist, this is the textbook narcissist. This is the one that comes up when you look up the picture of a narcissist in the dictionary. These are the ones that are charming, charismatic, cocky, arrogant, confident, often on top of the world, attractive, well put together, articulate narcissist. These are the ones we associate with success, with glamour, with celebrity. Now, the classical grandiose narcissist is the type of narcissist on whom the traditional definitions of narcissism have largely been based. These are the narcissistic individuals who classically show diminished empathy, lots of entitlement, grandiosity, arrogance, a chronic need for validation and consistent admiration seeking, superficiality and vanity, rage, especially when they're disappointed or frustrated, hypersensitivity in the face of criticism, difficulty managing stressors such as disappointment. They tend to love power and pleasure and profit, and they tend to measure success in terms of power, pleasure, and profit. These are the very slick, fancy, full of themselves narcissists. They are the narcissists, and you've seen it. These are the ones, they look good when things are going well. And because they are able to manipulate the reality of the world around them, life tends to often go really well for them. But since nobody out there is ever going to bat 1,000 and always have a perfect streak, when disappointment finally does arise in their lives, I don't know, a partner finally breaks up with them, the deal they wanted to make doesn't go through, they don't get into the law school that they want, they don't get the promotion they think that they deserve, their kid doesn't get to be a starter on the soccer team, their new business doesn't turn out to be that profitable, their friend marries someone much wealthier than their partner, whatever their version of disappointment is, when that happens, then the cracks show. They can become very rageful. They don't take responsibility. They project blame on other people. So given all of that, why are they so attractive to everyone? Well, let's face it, they are in full possession of the 4 C's of narcissism: charm, charisma, confidence, and cleverness. When you meet a grandiose narcissist, you almost feel like you're being pulled into this really special place and can often get a whiff of the grandiose high just by being in their presence. When you first meet them, you may take note of the fact that, yeah, they do talk about themselves a lot and their fancy lives and the fancy things that they do. They talk about that a lot. But their stories are actually so interesting and so big that it can feel like you're almost being pulled into like a really cool living Instagram story or something. But that's not really a person, is it? And so many people I know who ended up married to grandiose narcissists will talk about that moment they met. They felt like they were in a movie. Now, what are some of the warning signs of a grandiose narcissist? Pretty early in the game, they will get bored when you or someone else is talking, and the attention at that time is not on them. They may drone on and on and on about their vacation or their car or their job or their kids or whatever. But once someone else attempts to participate in the conversation, they're going to start kind of looking around the room, stop making eye contact, might sort of fiddle with their phone. They may even make that excuse, that classical excuse, that they are ADHD. But interestingly, they weren't so ADHD a few minutes ago when they were doing their whole look at me soliloquy. So yeah, that's not how ADHD works. When you have ADHD, you have ADHD. Not like, when I'm talking about me, I've got the laser focus. Now, another mistake people make is confusing their grandiosity and their tendency towards self-promotion as confidence. A good rule of thumb to remember is that genuinely confident people don't actually talk about themselves that much. People who are good know they're good. And they're often quite humble because they're self-possessed that they know what they know and they don't know what they don't know. So they will allow other people to talk or hold the floor. But so many of us are humble that we are often a little bit sort of perversely and strangely impressed by someone who's willing to sort of sit down and talk about their own virtues and gifts and magnificent qualities. Let's face it, humility never goes out of style. Chronic self-promotion gets tired really quickly, but because when we see it, it is still somewhat unusual, we're like, ooh, that's interesting, and we pay attention. Grandiose narcissists, especially when you're in the courtship process, are the masters of love bombing. They love to put on a show, and winning you over is part of that show. You feel like almost like a character in a play. So these are the ones that might do the over-the-top gestures in the beginning of the relationship. And you spend the rest of the relationship wondering what happened to those heyday early days when you were going to all the best places and doing the coolest things. And my goodness, these grandiose narcissists can look really good on paper. And sometimes they may even be lying on paper, but no matter what, they do make themselves look good on paper. Now, it depends on what looks good to you on paper. It may be the right car, the place that they live, the school that they attended, the job that they have, the salary that they earn, the family that they come from, the way that they look. I mean, again, every one of you has a different list. But as a rule, they tend to be really good at hitting the superficial aspects of the list, which often is about very material success. So, where do they come from? How do we make or how do we generate these grandiose narcissists? Very often, your grandiose narcissists are the kids who are raised sometimes in a way that they're told they are so wonderful, so great, especially when they excel at the thing their parents want them to excel at. So when they're the great soccer player, they love them. But when that child has an emotional need, parents aren't as interested and aren't that connected. As a result, as a child, many people who go on to be grandiose narcissists, they learn that working on their superficial exterior is a better investment of their resources because that is what will keep their parents and other adults engaged. In many cases, and the simplest way to view this is that grandiose narcissists are both overindulged because they get so much praise and recognition for doing good, looking good. Everyone sort of rallies around them to help them succeed, but at the same time, they're underindulged. They're never taught to regulate their feelings. They never really get the chance to have their emotions mirrored. They may also be children who are mirroring the behavior of their own entitled parents. Parents who are distracted with their own lives and their own stuff and their own experiences and can't be bothered with the nitty-gritty of raising their children in an emotional manner. Society doesn't help in all of this. In many ways, these are the narcissists that are the most enabled by society. Social media has given them a mothership, and grandiose narcissists love social media. And their tendency to self-promotion and overselling their abilities or their so-called virtues, and their willingness to break the rules to get ahead, means that the grandiose narcissists, even when they're kids, are often rewarded by school, and as they get older, by their employers and by the world at large. And as they get more and more power, the world enables them, because it can be a real problem if you get on the wrong side of a grandiose narcissist. For example, if you have a grandiose narcissistic boss who doesn't advance you in their job, that's how they'll stick it to you there. Or the grandiose narcissistic parent who cuts you out of the will. Trust me, you don't want to get on their wrong side, because they will make sure there is hell to pay. Now, why is it so hard to let a grandiose narcissist go? They don't like losing, so they will keep using tricks like hoovering to keep you on the hook if they do want to keep you around. Now, if you are already married to a grandiose narcissist, or in a family with them, or work with them, and they are overly concerned about things like appearances, which grandiose narcissists are typically over concerned about appearances, then they're going to care more that you still put on a show for the world and convince you that this facade you put to the world, that we are just that happy, perfect family, that you stick around. They may even future fake you to keep you hooked in. And because a relationship with a grandiose narcissist really does feel like a slot machine, more than relationships with other narcissists, you keep on wasting time and, frankly, money on them. You keep thinking, just like with that slot machine, you're going to win, and you're going to win them over. And that good feeling and that excitement that the grandiose narcissist brings from the very beginning might even come back for a minute. You might get love bombed again. That hope is always hanging out there. Grandiose narcissists can really run hot and cold. So you don't always know what you're getting with them. And sadly, that can almost make these relationships more enticing. So you try to keep the relationship going and try new strategies in the hope that things are going to change. As you know, they're not going to. Grandiose narcissists really play on the trifecta of hope, fear, and guilt that keep people stuck in these relationships. Hope that it'll go back to one of those good early love bomby days. Fear that you will never find excitement like this again, or that you might wind up alone. And guilt, well, there were some good times, and you know, it wouldn't be very nice of me to step away, because he sure is concerned that we all look good like a family to the community, and I don't want to wreck that for him. So when we compare the grandiose narcissists to the other kinds of narcissists, of all of them, these grandiose narcissists, they're the shiniest ones of all. And as always, remember that these narcissistic types often overlap. So you can see a narcissist who's both grandiose and communal, and there'll be more about that later in this series. Now, also remember that when we look at the theoretical work of researchers who study narcissism, such as Elsa Rottingstam, they argue that pretty much all grandiose narcissists have this covert underbelly, and vice versa. Covert narcissists have a grandiose underbelly. So if things go upside down for long enough for a grandiose narcissist, they will start looking like a victimized covert narcissist. Now, the grandiose narcissist doesn't have the menace and the cruelty of the malignant narcissist. And the grandiose narcissist can certainly be something we see as part of a larger cultural picture of narcissism. For example, someone comes from a culture where they have a lot of privilege. That could be driving their grandiosity. A grandiose narcissist may also be a byproduct of privilege, someone who grows up with lots of money and power and access. And this can result in a person who thinks that their you-know-what don't stink. And they will be the ones who sort of parade around and think that they deserve special attention. So this is part one of what that grandiose narcissist is about. A lot of you are already familiar with this definition and this type because it might be the one that's sort of the one that we know the most about because it's the one we see in TV and movies. And it might even be one of the ones that you've at least fallen for at least once. For those of you who have a parent like this, stay tuned because in part two, we're going to take on what does it really mean when this is how you're raised. But the fact of the matter is the grandiose narcissist is our textbook narcissist. Stay tuned for part two to learn more about what the grandiose narcissist is about. And before you do that, before we get to that part two, please do subscribe to this channel and hit that bell for notifications, not only for this next episode, but for the rest of this series and all of our content on narcissism. See you soon.